Hello, everyone. This is Daryl Andrews, Coach D, and coming to you with another, what I think to be, and society has proven to be a relative message regarding workplace dynamics and the situations that we're experiencing today as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the workplace. For many of you, we do quite a bit of different things here at our company, from workforce development success frameworks to diversity, equity, inclusion, coaching and training, to team building, training, core values integration. So we do quite a bit here, and even some individual coaching. As far as life coaching and career coaching and executive leadership type coaching. So we do quite a bit company wise, and love the fact I've been able to do this successfully now for at least 20 years. So we've been around for a minute. But what I want to do is we'll talk about why people really are really tired of the workplace. And some of this stuff is not going to be new, but it may be helpful for those of you out there who are working as a manager or a leader and struggling with trying to find people, trying to retain people. We just recently conducted some trainings for some teams in Philadelphia and beyond on the subject, and even looking at non-traditional ways to recruit and retain people. So we spent a lot of time in this field. I've presented at a lot of conferences on the subject. So it's not someone just talking about the subject, it's someone who's lived this for a very long period of time. So we definitely have a level of expertise when it comes to this. So let's kind of dive right in. Now, why are some of the people tired? I want to share with you something. Now, this is going to be deep, so just hang in there with me. And I once heard one of my dear speaker friends talk about this a long time ago. And it's an article that was in the New York Times, and it talks about the claim heart attacks um, are overwhelmingly take place on Monday. That's what the article is about, that they overwhelmingly take place on Monday. Now, what the article talks about is heart attacks are, significantly higher on Monday, but on weekends they've dropped down to significantly low numbers. And on Tuesday it drops down to significantly low numbers. So when you think about it, why is Monday such a big day for people having such a serious thing happen to them? And what the article is trying to propose is it because of the stress they have to go back in to do what they sometimes dread doing. And so I think realistically, when you look at it, and looking at that article in the New York Times, there's a lot of people who have just made the decision that that's not going to happen to them. Like, I don't want to be in a situation that I'm feeling so much stress that on Mondays, when I got to go and punch that clock, it could physically make me ill. Now, I'm not trying to say this is the only reason, but I just want to start this conversation with that, laying that foundation, because I think that was an interesting article. Think about it. Monday is the number one day for heart attacks, according to this research. And so again, I heard this 20 years ago. I think it was Zig Ziglar or one of them that said it. I'm not sure. But man, so what that's telling us is that the COVID-19 pandemic has had people a chance to stay at home and really rethink their lives in a whole. When you consider the fact that, in last year, over 3 million baby boomers pulled out of the marketplace. And according to an article that was mentioned through one of my speaking colleagues in NPR, it says something about 33 million people left the workplace during the pandemic. 33 million. There's some truth to what people are feeling on Mondays. So let's look at some of those things, so that if you're a company out there, if you're an organization out there, if you're an agency out there, and chime in. If anybody out there that does this kind of work and has some thoughts, I may pop it up on my screen so people can see it. So if you have other experts, not only experts, we want folks that's like, trying to drive a car without a license. You've never even done any work in this, but you got an opinion. And I'm okay with opinions too, but I really want to see if people out there that know a little bit about this workforce stuff can chime in And or if you have questions, chime in, because I've been on these training seminars and with different companies and organizations and agencies and workforce groups, and and you see this perplexed look in people's faces because they're like, what do we do with what do I do with this? I need the people, but it is not working, which is having another effect of the people who are working are burnt out because they're taking on double and triple duty. And so, and there's no clear end in sight. So one of the people we're training last week asked me the question, is this just a temporary thing? And I said, no, I don't think so, because people are back out again, even though the mask thing is there, a lot of the mask mandates have been lifted, they've been, they're lifted. So people are back out, they're just not going to work. So let's look at a few of them. There's a lot here, but I'm going to share some ones that I've talked to people about and ask them, hey, why would you not want to go back to work? What is it? And so here's just a few. One, the climate at work. If there's one thing that I hear people complain about a lot, a whole lot, it's their jobs. They do. They complain about their jobs, you see? And so the reality is this: why do people complain about their work so much? And what I found in having interactions with people quite a bit is that there's a certain thing that's taking place in when it relates to the climate at work that makes it vitriolic. Look the word up. This vitriol. You know, people try to people create negative paradigms about people. Bosses are talked about. Fellow employees are talked about. Um, Very rarely do you have optimistic conversations. People just complain, complain to each other, complain when they go home, you complain about work, and and so when you get a lot of people doing that, that impacts. That's called the culture of an organization. So now, and don't get me wrong, there's some organizations that externally look like they're doing very well. I consulted this one firm many years ago that was worth billions, billions, but internally they were a mess. I mean, everybody was dealing with stress. Everybody had ulcers. It was bad because the climate, they were producing in a major way. But boy, the people were just physically not doing well and mentally. And so we had to address that with them and help get them back on track. And we were able to, just by sharing some things with the leaders and how they led and things like that. And they shifted the gears and they were able to make some adjustments. And then all of a sudden the climate started to change. And instead of losing all these people, they started to retain them because they made some adjustments. So the climate at work is one of the reasons why people don't want to go back. They're like, I don't want to go back to that. You know what I mean? I've been here for during the pandemic, 8 months at home. Um, I got finally, Mondays went bad because I was virtual. I didn't have to go interact with this person, interact with that person. I'm good. You know, so the climate at the job is one of the biggest reasons. I'm telling you, people just after having so much time off, they don't want to go back. And then they had time to really think about, their own passions and their own interest. And they were like, hey, I'd rather did downsize, get an apartment, sell my house. I'm good, so that I can have some peace. And so I'm going to talk about the solution to that in just a few moments. Now another one is just feeling stressed because obviously if you have less people, that's going to double. Okay, thank you, Facebook user. Don't know your name, but in Facebook, I always tell people to put their name in because it shows up as Facebook user. But thank you, yeah. And so, matter of fact, I'm just going to put it up. That's so true. And people are just overwhelmed. Like they're like, I got to take on the job of 2, 3 people. Thank you, Monique. Appreciate it. Now we got you. All right. And so uh, we got to take it on. So what happens is now you got double and triple duty, whereas a person is not necessarily wired for double or triple duty. So they're thinking, I'm getting paid to do the job of 3 people. but I'm only getting one paycheck. And so some companies, because of their own challenges with, you know, lack of employees and lack of certain things, they don't think maybe temporarily we can say let's give more bonuses out, or let's do something to show folks we appreciate. What they do is they just stack on the work and expect the person to do it more work with the same pay. So people are like, this is crazy. So what happens is it has a worse effect, worse, worse effect. Then those people want to leave. You see, and so here's the thing. Feeling stressed is a big problem right now. And I would say to you as an employer, if you have your staff is smaller now than it was, take care of those folks that you got. I mean, if they're overworked, show something. I mean, don't just overwork them and say, just get it done, because that may not work for this generation of people, because folks are really stressed right now, and stress levels are overwhelming. Um, another thing that leads to, in particular, when you start having a decreased staff, is a um, lack of flexibility, which means that the pandemic has caused people to think about their children more. And what parents found out, and we're seeing it in mass numbers now because of the pandemic, a lot of our young people are significantly stressed out. You know what I mean? They weren't able to get out with their peers. They spent 8, 9 months, 10 months, a year on social media, which causes them to disconnect. Now they got to connect again, and they're not comfortable connecting because they've been disconnected for so long. So many of them have experienced stress and trauma. That's why I tell parents all the time, speak to your kids all the time, because kids are really not, a lot of young folks out here are struggling. And so, you know, parents recognize that, said, man, what am I doing to my kids? It's like, so they're saying, I'm going to take certain kind of jobs with companies that are flexible. That doesn't mean that every day I'm going to go in and ask for time to do something with my children, but some companies are moving more towards a production type work schedule where, there's certain tasks that need to get done. Now, I get it. Some jobs, you just need a physical body. I understand that. But we got to find creative ways to do that too, so that, even those folks who are there and committed can have some sense of flexibility to help them, in particular, because we're just not out of this pandemic. We want to think we are, but we're not. You know what I mean? They're talking about another variant. I was like, we don't need another variant. I'm still struggling with the last one because I ended up getting COVID in January, and it's nothing. There's nothing. It's no fun. Let's put it that way. And so, lack of flexibility. Here's one that I hear a lot, and I'm going to end with this one, and I'm going to give some strategies. Bosses who still want to use fear tactics to get people to do work. I'm like, how in the world would you try to intimidate someone today? Like, seriously. Again, if you feel free to chime into the chat feature if you have some thoughts on this. But this is not the time to be that tough guy or gal boss, because folks will just quit on you. Like, okay, you got this, I'm out of here, because there's 900 other companies hiring. I can go somewhere else. And as a matter of fact, one of the most significant questions that's being asked in interviews, as people are asking questions now, is what's the culture like? What is it like working for that person? What is it like? Because here's the deal. If you think you're going to intimidate somebody to do a job today, you're going to lose a whole lot of people. It ain't going to work. Not today. So you have to be efficient at trying to get people to do their jobs effectively with a different style, because people are still dealing with trauma. I do a lot of work in workforce development. We talk about client trauma, but the reality is the people who work with the clients have trauma. The people who work with the customers have trauma. The people who work with the students have trauma. And so we have to understand and we have to become astute in leadership to understand it's no longer just leadership by the sake of a title or a position. It's leadership by being smart and understanding people. And so the reality is that, when we talk about people being tired of work, these are things that people are talking about right now that, prior to 2018, 2019, before this pandemic hit, people weren't talking about this stuff. You just kind of what you did, kind of, how we did things, and so So there's a lot more. There's a few more. I don't want to go over all of them right now, but let's just keep in mind, feeling stressed, which again, the climate at work, lack of flexibility, and bosses who intimidate. Let me tell you something. That model is going to be that's a dying breed because you're not gonna have much success anymore. Hollering and screaming and trying to encourage, using that as a tool. You can still get the job done, but you got to do it with diplomacy. I always tell people to study emotional intelligence. Please, if you're a leader, study emotional intelligence. I'm almost begging you. I'm gonna type it in the chat feature. Yeah, study emotional intelligence. And you don't, I mean, right now, there's so much information on the internet. You can just go on the internet and get this information because as a leader, self regulation is going to be huge. Okay. The ability to regulate yourself, consider what people are saying and doing, and respond in the manner that's going to be productive, but not like you've lost control. Now, I've been around enough leaders, great leaders, who have taught me how to do that. You know what I mean? I can still get my point across without tearing the person down, because the responsibility is the responsibility, and there's nothing that could be done about that. I mean, if everybody's around relaxing, we're going to go under. If we're an agency or an organization, people can't just simply, just do whatever they want to do. They have to work. But there's a better way of engaging folks in the process of doing it as an effective leader. With that being said, let's give some solutions because it's nothing worse than talking about problems and don't have any solutions. All right. So, solution number one is simply what I just been talking about. We need a post pandemic style of leadership. All right. Now, we've been doing some training on it and some coaching on it. Obviously, I'm going to tell you what we do because that's what we do. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can go to my website. All my information is on LinkedIn. So it's right there. But post pandemic leadership has to be a unified effort. What I mean by that, if your company has 10 leaders, 20 leaders, 5 leaders, or 1,000 leaders, you have got to get your leaders to understand the way we interact with people has to change today. All right. That doesn't mean, right, that the people don't have a job to do. Okay. Um, but here's the thing. Uh, we have to understand how do we communicate. And post-pandemic leadership has got to be what I call, and write this down. I'm going to type it in the chat feature to help you out here. Values centric leadership. So I have to be driven by values. Okay. I really do. I'm trying to see something here, but this is not, yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right. It is the art of communication. I like this statement. I'll pop it up. Yeah. It's the art of communication, emotional intelligence. Yes, it is. I agree with you. Now, we won't have your name, but if you put your name in there, we got you. I don't know. StreamYard always does Facebook user. I don't know what it is, but it is. And so, as a leader, we need value centric leadership. Now, here's what I want to clarify. I talk this stuff but with leaders all over the country. Tomorrow, we'll be having some conversation on workforce development with a bunch of corporate leaders that are like directors of organizations. We talk to folks about this stuff all the time. But what we need to understand, value centric leadership does not mean that you become this super soft person that people can get over on. That's not what I'm talking about. You see, but if you're a value centric leader, what you're doing is you still get the job done, but you're doing it based upon core values that you've established within your organization: integrity, respect, honest communication, respectful communications, diversity, a variety of different things. So you now don't just have core values. The way you operate is based upon those core values. This is really good information I shouldn't be giving for free. I should be charging people for this. But the reality is, I just love to see people, excel. But so we have these conversations, but you can't do it the way it used to be done. So I can still tell you something needs to get done as a leader, but I can do it in such a respectful way that you respect the way that I said it to you. Now, that don't mean that the person automatically agree with it. And that person may have some opinions, some thoughts. But as a leader, you have to always show yourself as well composed. You know, one of the greatest leaders I've interacted with, and I had him in my life for a bunch of years here in Delaware, was a guy named Nathan Hill. And Nathan was the president of Discover Card. And I'm gonna tell you something. There was an old commercial. I'm gonna give my age away that said, "You never let him see you sweat." I never saw that man sweat. Running that multi-billion-dollar company, his disposition and demeanor was one of always being under control. And it was so impactful and influential. It influenced me. So when I interact with people, I don't lose control, man. I just don't, because I have to have some emotional intelligence. That's what great leaders have. Great coaches, you see them. All them coaches slamming their stuff on the side. People, sometimes it looks good, but coaches who, pull a team together, um, and, uh, and say, let's sit down and talk, and they do strategy. Those are the coaches. You see, those are the coaches that seem to win a lot. All right. So we need post-pandemic leadership skills. Another thing too is we really need to make a strong emphasis on helping our employees embrace the principles of self-care. People are just stressed, burnt out, tired, exhausted. The hospitals can't handle everybody because of COVID. So other folks that need other things aren't getting in there. It's a lot going on physically. I mean, I had COVID in January, and I've been dealing with things off and on myself from that. And so people are dealing with a lot of stuff right now. And so this is not a wellness program. I'm talking about specific insights and understanding of the psychology of this thing of self-care, so that people can put systems together for themselves and operate within it, where it becomes a part of the corporate culture. It's just important. It really is important. I mean, I'd have a lot to say about that, because we do it with organizations. If you're interested, there's a little website right there. Take a look. I mean, this is just something we've done successfully for a long period of time, and we can help, because the reality is, healthy people make healthy companies, healthy organizations, healthy schools, healthy school districts. When people are unhealthy, it shows. Unhealthy physically, unhealthy mentally. You can't even talk to people. You look in the other direction when they walk by. There's no health in that. There's no health. And that's when Monday becomes a heart attack day, because now I'm so anxious about seeing somebody or interacting with somebody. I'm full of anxiety, and that just overwhelms me. No, we want to get to the place where these organizations, businesses, and corporations, I'm not saying that we're all jumping for joy, but man, we can respect each other. We can respect the work that we're doing. We can, show respect for our employees, and employees for managers. That takes work. Those things, especially nowadays, it just doesn't happen. you know. So we want to do the post-pandemic leadership. And then thirdly, you need to work on this last thing. Corporate organizational climate and culture is really going to be the deciding factor on if organizations are going to survive or if they're going to go under. Because I'm going to tell you right now, people are just not going back to where it was. And they will stay away from an organization that's built on vitriolic interactions. It really is. They really will. Because people just don't have the energy, the bandwidth, or anything else to deal with those type of things. And so we want to take time, look at our culture, and it's going to be ugly for some of us because it's not good. But ignoring it doesn't change anything. It's like a disease. You ignore that disease long enough, then after a while, what it's going to do? It's going to take you to a place where another place. But when you deal with it and get medical attention and focus on it, you may be able to survive to live another day. All right. And so it's so important to understand that there's a reason why people are tired of the workplace. And as a workforce development consultant, we do other things as well. We talk about this stuff all the time. There's great researchers out there doing great work. I like the work of Dr. Chris Laney from MC. He does great research on this, and many others. A lot of these organizations out here do phenomenal. I know Sherm is doing a lot of data on this stuff, and workforce organizations out there that are doing great work, like NAWDIP, National Association of Workforce Development Professionals. Pennsylvania, all these different groups I work with, and Texas has definitely got it. Why Texas is one of the few states that's really doing quite well when it comes to this, because they have a really good system there, and they work that system very well. And so people make the connections. And so I'm a big fan of the work down there with the Texas Workforce Commission and all of that. Um, so that's all I have for you today. Listen, here's the deal. The deal is don't think it's going back to normal. It's not. It's not going back to normal. It is what it is. And what we have to do is see how we're going to slowly make adjustments. I'm not talking about rapid change to this post pandemic new normalcy that we're looking at in these organizations. And in doing so, what you're going to find, this is what I was sharing with someone yesterday on had a SelfCare podcast with my friend Cami Eakins, who's over at Career Path Services over in Washington. And we were just talking about it, that the reality is this is the new normal. This is how things are going to be. And we need to make adjustments, slow adjustments through a systems approach. And what we were really discussing is how we think there's going to be a better new normal once we can work through it. Just like anything, when you're going through changes, it's hard. But then you get to the other side and say, man, our workplaces are so much better because people have worked on it. It's not just about the big kahunas and the ones that's making all the money. And no, it's about everybody. Everybody plays an important role. I used to work for a company years ago, and all they talked about was stockholders. I said, well, we're here too. Yes, we love our stockholders, but what about us? We're out here grinding every day. Show us a little love. Seriously. So that's all I have for you today. I hope the information was helpful. I went a little longer than I expected to. If you have any questions, reach out to us. You can go to the Coach D website. If you like to brainstorm or some things, you reach out because we brainstorm all the time. And would love to see your thoughts and input on this topic. We will be having more conversations about this as time goes on. Take care.